I mentioned earlier that Shannon's daughter, Sienna, is another example of what we're talking about here. Here's what Shannon says about Sienna, her 4-year-old daughter with Down syndrome. She says, Sienna is a remarkable little girl that loves life. She is a smiley, energetic, empathetic ray of sunshine. Her favorite activity is spending time with her big sister, whom she adores. If we let her, she would watch Sesame Street all day. Elmo is a way of life in our house. She loves music, books, therapy, and playing outside. She's mischievous, funny, and beautiful. She has the ability to bring smiles to our family. On the worst of days, we wouldn't change one thing about her. Sienna happens to have an extra copy of her 21st chromosome, also known as trisomy 21 or Down syndrome. Sienna's diagnosis came as a surprise to us after enduring 4 miscarriages. She was our miracle baby. Our miracle baby surprised us on the day of her birth with her diagnosis and a heart condition. We were completely unprepared to raise a child with a disability. After I delivered her, a kind nurse explained to me how lucky we were to have Sienna here in Pennsylvania after passage of the Affordable Care Act. And then she went on to talk about how Pennsylvania had some benefits in Medicaid. And then Shannon continues, as I entered this new world of early intervention, therapies, and medical needs, I began to realize just how much of a financial toll this would take on all of us if it weren't for the protections of the ACA and Medicaid. Custom orthotics, outpatient weekly therapies, overnight hospital stays, adaptive strollers, walkers, safety sleepers, echocardiograms, communication devices, blood work, the list goes on. Sienna receives 7 weekly therapies. The cost of those alone are $3,400 per week. Without the ACA, her therapies and medical care would have quickly exceeded the lifetime cap, and Sienna would be uninsurable for the rest of her life and left without access to life-saving care. Shannon goes on, I'm proud to be Sienna's mom. The journey is full of wonder, joy, and unimaginable love. It changes life's most ordinary moments into the extraordinary. But with constant attacks on our health care, it's also agonizing work, hard decisions, and constant advocacy. It gets exhausting, fighting for your child, having to prove their value to the world. Then she goes on at the very end. Once again, we as parents are forced to suit up for battle and prove that our children are worthy of health care. Her last line of this statement is, everyone loses if our children are unable to reach their fullest potential. So that's Shannon talking about Sienna, her daughter. She used that same word that Aaron used. Different stories, similar burdens, but she used that same word that Aaron used, uninsurable. Uninsurable if the Affordable Care Act is taken away. She talks about life with the Affordable Care Act and without it. And that's what a lot of parents do when they write to us. They tell us what their life was like before the Affordable Care Act and what their life is like now, and what their life would return to. Those dark days when an insurance company could make a determination about a child's insurance, their coverage, their treatment, frankly, their life. And then towards the end, she talks about what she and other parents feel under these constant attacks. Quote, having to prove their value, the value of their child. We as parents are forced to suit up for battle, and prove that our children are worthy of health care. I've asked the same question again. In America? In America, that's what we want to do? Have this constant battle? Parents have to come here to the United States Senate and to the House. The organization that this mom is a part of is called Little Lobbyists. This is a group formed because of the battles on health care. Why the hell is this going on in America? Why should we be fighting about progress that's been made? Why aren't we talking about improvements, getting the cost of health care down, getting the cost of prescription drugs down? But let's make improvements. Why do these parents have to continually battle to ensure that their children have this kind of protection? Should mothers really have to suit up for battle in the United States of America, where the powerful get their way all the time in this place? There are different kind of lobbyists that come in. They're not little lobbyists. They're not mothers and their sons and daughters. They're different kind of lobbyists. Corporations did really well in the tax bill of 2017, a bill that was rammed through between Thanksgiving and Christmas. What did they get? Well, they got about a 14-point reduction in their corporate tax rate, permanent tax relief, jacked up the debt to do it because they had power. I thought that was, when you compare that action that the Senate took at the time to what some in the Senate want to do on health care, to roll back the protections, to rip away protections for these children, and not even talking tonight about the adults that are impacted. But when you compare those two actions, it's really perverse and disgusting that the powerful get to come in here and get permanent tax relief and get a bonanza, the likes of which we haven't seen in modern American history. And all these parents are asking us to do is preserve what we have. They're not asking for anything more. They're just saying, please make sure my child doesn't lose their coverage. Please make sure that they have the therapies they need when they have these complex medical needs, multiple disabilities, not one in many cases, but multiple. That's all they're asking us to do. And that's why it's such an important matter in the Supreme Court fight. Because you got to ask, why the rush to get this nominee through by Election Day? It's never happened before this close to an election. Well, I'll tell you why. This nominee is being fast-tracked, first of all, because this nominee has been vetted by the two groups that matter, the Federalist Society and the Heritage Foundation. Both groups totally committed to striking down the Affordable Care Act. So she's already passed that test, and she apparently passed with flying colors as she moves very quickly to a likely confirmation. But why the fast track to get there in a matter of days? What's coming up? Is it Election Day? No. There's a date after the election. It's November the 10th. That's the argument date. They know that if she is not on the Supreme Court, is she not confirmed as a member of the court by the argument, November the 10th, she can't participate in the decision. What's the decision? The decision to strike down the Affordable Care Act. That's what it is. The decision that really is the proxy for what did not happen on the floor of the United States Senate in July of 2017, when the repeal effort failed, and when it failed multiple times in the House over many years. This is the proxy for it. Litigate it, fund it, and run that case right up the chain to the Supreme Court. So that's what this is about. They want to make sure that she is on the court and at the argument so she can be the deciding vote on the Affordable Care Act. That's why we're rushing. How about another health care issue? How about Medicare? I mentioned Medicaid. How about Medicare? The program that used to have bipartisan support all across the board. Now, Judge Barrett was asked a direct question about Medicare, and she didn't want to give an opinion on Medicare. She was asked it in the context of the constitutionality of Medicare. And the member of the Judiciary Committee, Senator Feinstein, asked it because she referenced a law review article about questioning the constitutionality of Medicare. I think that's a loopy theory. I think that's a theory that most Americans, probably 90% of Americans, don't agree with. Questioning the constitutionality of Medicare, passed more than 50 years ago, and has benefited tens and tens and tens of millions of Americans, still today benefits numbers like that. 45 million, roughly, I think it is. I don't know why. I understand why the judge doesn't want to say, well, in this case, it's before the court, or this case that is unsettled, I might have I can't give you a determination. But on Medicare, couldn't she have at least said, instead of mentioning, as she did in her answer, the law professor's name twice, who has this loopy theory on Medicare constitutionality, couldn't she have said simply, well, I can't tell you how I'm going to rule on a Medicare case, but I can tell you that just like Brown v. Board of Education is a super precedent in a judicial sense, I think most people would agree that Medicare is a super precedent in a legislative sense. She wouldn't have violated any principle of not telling how you're going to come down in a case. She could just tell us or relate to us the reality that most Americans believe about Medicare. Now, I know there's been some commentary about her law review article or I should say her writings about the 2012 Supreme Court case. Now, we know that the case she was referring to was a 2012 case. So in 2017, Judge Barrett wrote an article about what Chief Justice Roberts ruled in the case. She wrote, quote, Chief Justice Roberts pushed the Affordable Care Act beyond its plausible meaning to save the statute, unquote. In light of her frequent criticism of the act, the Affordable Care Act, Senator Leahy of Vermont asked her during her confirmation hearing whether she had ever written or spoken in favor of the law. She has not. So that's what she was writing in 2017. I have to ask, if she felt so strongly about the 2012 decision by the court and the position of Justice Roberts, she didn't seem to write much about it for a couple years till 2017 when you had a new president. And what followed a few months later was she was nominated to the Circuit Court of Appeals. So that's curious. But what we know is that the president that nominated her, President Trump, certainly wants to strike down the Affordable Care Act. And in fact, in May, he said he wanted to, quote, terminate health care, unquote, under the Affordable Care Act. And we know the impact of that, the destruction, the act of striking down the Affordable Care Act would harm tens of millions of Americans. In Pennsylvania, 5.5 million people with a pre-existing condition would be affected. Over 840,000 Pennsylvanians who were enrolled in Medicaid expansion would be, of course, adversely impacted. So that's the reality of what we're talking about with regard to this nomination. I'll mention one more, make reference to one more family before I conclude my remarks, Mr. President. It's the Kovacs family also from western Pennsylvania, Plum Borough, Pennsylvania, in Allegheny County, not too far from Pittsburgh. The Kovacs' 11-year-old son, Thomas, is blind and has multiple disabilities. He has epilepsy, microencephaly, and intellectual disabilities. His mom, Jessica, says the Affordable Care Act has made all of their lives better. The ACA has made it possible for Thomas to receive therapy services at his school, Center Elementary School in Plum Borough. The ACA has given his parents the option to change jobs and advance in their careers without fear of not being able to obtain health coverage for him because of his pre-existing conditions. And they don't need to worry about busting through lifetime expense caps and losing coverage for Thomas. The ACA has brought peace of mind and comfort to their family because they know that he is protected by the essential health care benefits the law provides. Striking down the ACA isn't only about the essential health benefits, it's about a lot more than that. There's so much more that I could talk about tonight, so many more examples, but I'll conclude with that, Mr. President, and just make one final comment. When I think about what could happen and what is likely to happen if Judge Barrett is confirmed, becomes a member of the court, participates in the argument on November the 10th, and then because of that participation is allowed to, and as a member of the court is allowed to rule on this ACA case, it's highly likely that the Affordable Care Act will be wiped out. And I have to ask about the fate of Abby and Sienna and so many other children like them all across our Commonwealth and all across the country. I think often in government, we must ask, here in the United States Senate or in the House or in the other branch of government, the judicial branch, or in any branch of government, the executive, legislative, or judicial branches, we should all ask ourselves, is this action I am taking, or is this policy or program advancing the cause of justice or not? Mr. President, I would submit that striking down the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act by virtue of a Supreme Court decision is not only the wrong policy, it is a giant step backwards in the interests of justice. Justice demands that these children have these protections, that these protections are not undermined, they're not compromised, and they're not taken away by judicial fiat. And this nomination threatens the health care that children like Abby and Sienna have right now in the United States of America, where we advanced into the light of protection for those children. And when you consider what is at stake right now, it's that case. I think it's potentially the most important case the court will decide in the next quarter century. That's the impact of it. Very few Americans are not directly affected by this case, either because they're affected by way of loss of coverage or they're affected because of the scope of the protections that were brought about by the passage of the Affordable Care Act, the enactment of it. So a lot is at stake, not to mention so many other issues and so many other matters that will come before the court. So for that reason and several others, I'll be voting against the nomination of Judge Barrett to be on the Supreme Court. And if I have an opportunity between now and the vote, I'll outline some other reasons why. But for purposes of tonight, this morning, I wanted to talk about children like Abby and Sienna and their moms. The moms, Erin and Shannon, should have the peace of mind that has come with the protections of the Affordable Care Act. And with that, Mr. President, I will yield the floor.